What's up, guys? I'm Josh Pate. That's Steve Wiltfong. That time of week again. It's time for the weekly Wiltfong recruiting Whiparound. Steve, we actually got games in the rearview mirror that we can talk about. The one that I had to go right to was that standalone Sunday night game, Tallahassee, Florida. Notre Dame gets up big, and then Florida State. You and I were texting back and forth, all of a sudden wondering, what in the world is Florida State trying to pull off here? So everyone was watching the game, but you and I had talked the previous week on this very episode about all the recruits that were going to be in the house and about what an opportunity it was for Florida State. Well, now we saw the outcome. You got to experience Doak Campbell Stadium at full throat. You got to experience an electric atmosphere. You saw a very competitive game. So what do you think the impact what kind of impact long-term will this have on Florida State recruiting this year and beyond, potentially?
Well, Florida State has the number 10 class in the country per 24/7 Sports. It's number 1 in the ACC. It's a class that puts them on a trajectory to be where they want to be down the road. And when you look at the biggest official visitor on campus, 5-star receiver Kevin Coleman, I got word leading up to the visit that Florida State was the leader, but I didn't put in my crystal ball because I didn't know what they were going to look like against the Irish. And when you invest a lot into a big recruiting weekend and you're bringing in the top players in 2023 and you're bringing in some pivotal official visitors in 2022 for a showdown with a top 10 team, you can hit big like Florida State did this weekend. I think that it's going to pay dividends down the road if they continue to play well. But man, you could also go out there and get smoked. And so I wanted to make sure that Florida State played well and put on a good show. And boy, did they. And before the game ended, I fired in my crystal ball for Florida State. And I feel even better about that pick coming out of the weekend. I think Florida State's the clear leader for the St. Louis product, who's a standout on both sides of the ball, a gritty, tough kid, very dynamic, smart football player also. I think Florida State is way out in front for him right now. You got Texas in the mix, you got Oregon in the mix, and a couple of others. But I love where Florida State stands with him. And Florida State had some big playability on their offense in the game against Notre Dame, but they need a lot more to get to another level, the level that all Florida State Nation wants them to be at, which is winning another national championship. And players like Kevin Coleman, I think, helped get them there. So many young players either watched the game or attended it and saw a Florida State team that played so well. And I think Florida State's coaching staff, when you look at the schools in that state, does the best job of recruiting from top to bottom. But those relationships don't matter when you go out on the field and you don't play well. But it's college football, Josh, as you know, and you're saying good things about Florida State. I'm saying good things about Florida State and writing good things, but you're only as good as the last game you played. And later on in the season, Florida State, they got to play Clemson. They got to play North Carolina. They got to play a good NC State team. They got to play Miami. They got to play at Florida. You can't lose all those games. You got to win some big games now. You got to keep showing progress because you're, like I said, you're only as good as the last game you played. And right now, so far, so good. But Florida State, there's a lot more opportunity down the road to keep capitalizing. And if they do, I think it's going to be a hellacious class, their first top 10 class since 2017. And they could really make a big run if they play as well as they did against Notre Dame as they do, or as they could later against some of those opponents I just mentioned.
So also last week, Steve, we spent a lot of time talking about Georgia and the whole who needs the win more argument between Georgia and Clemson. And you convinced me. You pulled me over to your side as only you can do. And you said, what about recruiting? Forget about the playoff this year. What about recruiting long term? Georgia recruits want to see results. They need to see a win in one of these big games. And finally, it was a neutral site. Some kids could be there. It wasn't a typical official visit, but they finally got to watch, whether it's in person or on TV, Georgia win one of these big games. What do you think the aftermath is?
Well, it was the biggest win of the Kirby Smart era, and I think gives them just a little more street cred as they recruit against Alabama and Clemson and Ohio State for elite football players. And obviously Georgia's done a good job in that realm. They've had 2 number 1 classes, but I think at some point, if they don't beat Clemson and they can't make the playoff, that the results weren't going to continue to come their way. I think that they've been able to sell these first few years. We're building something special. We're going to win a national championship. And I think this win over Clemson proves that they're definitely in that hunt and in that equation, and they're real, and they're one of the elite teams in college football. And it's the biggest win of the Kirby Smart era. And you have 5-star defensive tackle Bear Alexander there, who's a former commit to Georgia. The crystal ball trends at A&M as soon as he decommits. He's from the Lone Star State. I'm not counting Georgia out. And they loved what they saw from Georgia. Walter Nolan's in the house, the #1 overall player in the country. I think Georgia's in the middle of that for him. But so many young kids, the Caleb Downses of the world, the AJ Harrises of the world, those 5-star 2023 DBs. That was a win over Clemson that kind of sets the tone for the young kids too. That, hey, we just saw Georgia win as big a football game as anyone might win all season.
So in Big Ten country this Saturday, Steve, you got Ohio State in Columbus welcoming in Oregon. That's the noon Eastern time kickoff. Then in prime time, you got Washington 0-1 already on the season on the road in the Big House to take on Michigan. I would imagine these dates have been circled for a while. Got to be huge recruiting weekends in both spots.
Yeah, 2 stadiums that seat over 100,000 people. You talk about that atmosphere for that Clemson Georgia game and 74,000 people. Wait till Auburn walks into Happy Valley in 2 weeks for a whiteout game with over 100,000 people at night. But there's going to be over 100,000 people inside the shoe for this noon kickoff against Oregon, and that's going to be a special atmosphere as well. You got top 247 defensive lineman Caden Curry taking his official visit. It's his first official of the process. He went to Alabama in the summer, went to Clemson in the summer, went to Ohio State and Indiana. Those are the major players for him, but I love where the Buckeyes stand because of proximity. Ohio State's recruited him as well as anybody. Good relationship with Larry Johnson and that pedigree. Loves Mickey Marotti and the strength staff. This is a big opportunity. And Caden Curry, the 5th school in the mix is Oregon, for him to get a chance to see 2 of his favorite programs go toe-to-toe. So also a potential opportunity for Mario Cristobal and the Ducks to make an impression on Caden as he wants to take an official out to Eugene. Ernest Green, the big offensive lineman from St. John Bosco in California, he was in the house with you for Georgia's win over Clemson. Georgia's in a really good spot for him. Ohio State can grab some more momentum here. Christian Miller's a defensive lineman from the Atlanta area, top 247 player that was trending USC in the summer. I don't think he's going to go to USC any longer. I'm looking more at like Ohio State, Georgia, and some of those. The better peer recruiter in the country than him, one of the jewels of an Ohio State class, the terrific linebacker. He's, of course, going to be on campus with some of those commitments, and then a bunch of elite 2023, Sonny Styles, Luke Montgomery, Caleb Downs again, Concrete Mateo, Uagalele, DJ's little brother, will be there. And so a terrific group. And the #1 overall player in the country in 2024, quarterback Jaden Davis, who tops the top 247 rankings. He's been to Ohio State before. His dad's been to Ohio State before. They love it. They're bringing mom this time. It's her first time on campus. So I think that it's a pivotal visit in that regard. And then over at Michigan, and it's going to be a big weekend as well. They're going to have a lot of young kids, a lot of major talent for a night game in the Big House. And history says that Michigan in big games in the Big House at night in front of that crowd, they're tough to beat. Kenneth Grant's a 4-star defensive lineman from Indiana that they're battling Ohio State for. I like the Buckeyes earlier in the summer. I think Michigan, with that visit for the barbecue at the Big House, has really drawn that one even. And so I think Michigan can make another move with Kenneth Grant. Josh Connerly is one of the premier offensive tackle prospects in the country, #3 in the 24/7 Sports Composite. He's coming in from Washington State. Michigan's always been near the top of his list. Lander Barton is a 6'4", 250-pound linebacker, edge type from Utah that Michigan's recruiting as hard as anybody on the board. He's taking his official visit, and I am definitely not sleeping on the maize and blue for him. And one more name I'm going to highlight, and then we're going to just cover the heck out of this weekend on the Michigan Insider with Sammy Webb, Stevie Lorenz, and Bryce Marich and those guys. But I logged a crystal ball, Josh. Joshua Josephs, not Joshua Pate of Pate State, but Joshua Josephs of North Cobb in Kennesaw, Georgia. We recently promoted him to 4 stars. He's one of the premier edge players in the Peach State. Michigan was ahead of us on their ranking. He's been a top target for them for a long time. He took his official in June. He's coming back for this game. I had a source double down again this morning that hit me up yesterday that's in that state that said that Michigan's the one to beat. So I'm riding with the Wolverines as they battle Penn State, Tennessee, and Kentucky for Joshua Josephs coming into this visit.
Huge weekend. Keep it locked on 247sports.com for all the latest. Stephen Wiltfong, got a busy weekend ahead of you, sir. We will talk to you next week.